system that we live under, which we do not accept, will end. ثم تكون الخلافة على منهج النبوة. That same Islamic system, that Islamic society will return.
Actually, we need many more people like him at the top of government, in every government, in this country, across the 4 nations and in other governments, that can influence, sit at the top table and make a difference on behalf of the Muslims.
Our grandfathers who came here and run the infrastructure, it was our grandfathers who brought you the lovely curry, which is your national dish. So how can you tell us to go? We're not going nowhere. We are here to stay. Like I say, we're not here to take part. We're here to take over.
It's July 2024. 5 pro-Gaza independents just won seats in British Parliament, despite Labour having more votes nationally in many of those areas. These were Muslims campaigning on identity and grievance, uniting communities behind faith. And what they did promise was this sectarian movement growing even bigger and winning even more seats in future elections. What people had just witnessed was only the beginning. At the time, we didn't know how this would be done, but now we do. One of the world's oldest democracies is now sliding into sectarian politics, and Islamism is leading the charge. And the body leading the charge is called the Muslim Impact Forum, or MIF for short. On paper, it's a UK-based initiative that wants to elevate Muslim participation and influence in politics and global affairs. It officially launched in London on September 25th this year, with Scotland's former First Minister Humza Yousaf giving the keynote speech at Palestine House. If you aren't familiar with him, he's the guy who gave this rather infamous speech.
The Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. The MIF didn't pop out of nowhere. It's an offshoot of something called the Global Donors Forum, run by the World Congress of Muslim Philanthropists since 2008. That's a network that's worked closely with heavyweights like the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Islamic Development Bank, and the Qatar Foundation. This means MIF isn't a grassroots community project. It's backed by some of the richest and most politically connected Muslim institutions on the planet. In fact, even Turkey's First Lady, Emin Erdogan, attended one of MIF's early gatherings in Istanbul, a strong hint at where the group's influence and sympathies might lie. Even their slogan, "We're not emerging, we have arrived," makes the intention clear. It's a statement of arrival, of power. The MIF's launch videos have been rather revealing. At the launch, this is what Humza Yousaf had to say.
Look, the Muslim Impact Forum is needed now more than ever before. I think it's fair to say that the challenges, not just the Muslim community faces, but humanity faces, are very grave indeed. Very difficult times that we live in. You can see in the United Kingdom alone, the rise of the far right, driven by anti-Muslim hatred. And that's not just common to the United Kingdom, it's common to Europe, and of course we can see also in the United States as well. And then in the East, we see some major challenges, thinking about particularly the genocide in Gaza, but many challenges across the world. And yet, the Muslim community is huge in number, very wealthy, very generous. We have amongst our numbers entrepreneurs, business owners, NGOs, charities, philanthropists, social activists, politicians, media, journalists, and so much more. And the purpose of the Muslim Impact Forum is how do we bring these people, how do we bring that talent together?
And another senior figure, Professor Javed Khan, went even further.
Actually, we need many more people like him at the top of government, in every government, in this country, across the 4 nations and in other governments, that can influence, sit at the top table and make a difference on behalf of the Muslims. In this country, there are 4 million Muslims, and that number is growing fast. But of those 4 million, 50% are under the age of 25. 1/3 are actually under the age of 15. So it's a very, very young community.
This is where the mask slips. Publicly, the MIF says it wants understanding between communities, but inwardly, it speaks the language of consolidation and power. People like Humza are relying on a young, growing Islamic population in the UK to give them even more power. The past election and smaller elections elsewhere in the UK has proven to them that, hey, If you campaign on issues like Gaza, but make it a Muslim issue, you would actually gain a lot of success. Why? As Humza said, the Muslim population in the UK is young and overall almost 10% of the population now. And to back them up is the modern left, also stuck in a cycle of grievance issues and honestly, the hope that they could remake Western civilization. The Red-Green Alliance, as I do often say on this channel. When you take political frustration, mix it with religious identity, and then give it structure and funding, you get sectarianism. The very idea of organizing politics around religion carries built-in fault lines. Instead of citizens uniting under shared civic values, you end up encouraging one part of society to see itself as the Muslims. Once that happens, politics stops being about policy and starts being about belonging. It becomes us versus them, which to be fair is today's state in the UK. Now, before we get to the next part, if you're enjoying this video so far, please remember to give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and consider signing up on Patreon, which comes with a ton of perks. Now, history tells us what happens next. Social scientists have a simple rule: diversity doesn't cause conflict, politicized identity does. The moment religion becomes the organizing principle of political power, the gap between groups starts to widen. What MIF is doing is turning faith into a political category, and identity politics has a nasty habit of breeding its own opposite. You get counter-mobilisation. In this case, average Brits who aren't Muslim, who suddenly feel threatened in their own countries against a religion that makes it no secret what its ultimate goals are. A great example of this actually came about recently when our favourite Muslim propagandist, Muhammad Hijab, had this to say.
How comes you're not in the immigrant areas? Come to the immigrant areas. Why don't you, the far right, come to the immigrant areas? Because you know what's going to happen. Wallah, you know what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you'll get battered. That's what's going to happen. Physical. I'm telling you, you go to the immigrant areas, you will get battered.
Yes, this man is threatening violence towards non-Muslims who might step foot in Muslim neighborhoods. It's rather ironic, isn't it? Because most of these people with immigrant backgrounds are threatening, well, let me correct myself there, planning to take over neighborhoods and governments from the indigenous populations of the United Kingdom. Something they hate when it's brought up, by the way, and conversations like that, especially in places like the UK, are being stifled by the ruling class almost every day. That's exactly why I use Proton VPN and why I think you should too. They're based in Switzerland, outside the reach of US, EU, UK and Australian law. They don't keep logs and are built by the same team behind Proton Mail. When the UK passed its surveillance laws, Proton VPN became the #1 app on the App Store. Their stealth protocol beats censorship firewalls. Secure Core routes your traffic through privacy-first countries, and NetShield blocks trackers before they ever reach you. I've used Proton Mail since Australia announced sweeping surveillance laws last year, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's now essential. If you want to protect your privacy and support this channel, hit the link below to get up to 60% off Proton VPN. If we are mapping the future, initiatives like the MIF are planning to double or triple down on what's already in the UK. From governments looking away when issues like grooming gangs appear, to cousin marriage being promoted by the NHS, to plans of making Islamic blasphemy law reality. In fact, if you've been following this channel for a while, you would know the Home Office is already severely compromised by Islamist networks embedded within it. Now, extrapolate that. Suddenly you would see measures taken to ensure terror offences or terror investigations, which overwhelmingly and disproportionately involve Muslims in the UK, are made less visible, less reported, and handled with softer thresholds for fear of discrimination. As this influence grows, even accountability starts to bend. Actual hate crimes against Christians or Jews, if they come from this particular side, the one backed by powerful groups like the MIF, would be quietly ignored or dismissed. You would see Islamic symbolism becoming more common in public life, and as local councils and towns gradually fall under this influence, subtle cultural shifts begin to take hold. Maybe the kind of meat that gets served changes. Alcohol licenses get harder to obtain. Pub owners are pressured to shut down. Dress codes for women become cultural expectations.
We're not dressed like that in Muslim area.
I'm so appalled.
We don't care if you're appalled at all.
Muslim
A Muslim area. It's Great Britain.
This we don't care. It's not so Great Britain.
Bit by bit, the local character changes to align with Islamic norms. And the irony? The very same politicians who once waved the banner of diversity and equality would stand by in silence as hard-won civil rights like same-sex marriage, gender equality, and free expression are quietly eroded. The same tolerance that built liberal Britain becomes the weapon used to dismantle it. It's not a hard reality to imagine, because there are currently many areas of the UK that function exactly like this through sheer demographic changes. Of course, organisations like the MIF, off the back of Gaza, have realised they now have enough people to make this nationwide. This should alarm every person in the UK. The next problem is what this does to democracy itself. Once religion becomes a qualification for power, meritocracy dies. The MIF's entire premise of getting more Muslims into power might sound like representation, but it's really a polite way of saying faith before competence, and that's not how democracy works. Imagine for a second if someone launched a Christian impact forum with the same goal, getting more Christians into parliament. The backlash would be instant. Outrage from every media outlet, petitions, protests, calls to ban it outright. Yet, when it's under the banner of Islam, the same people who claim to defend equality suddenly go quiet. This is where the Tower Hamlets example becomes painfully relevant. In East London, you had a community that turned identity politics into a local machine. Voters were pressured by imams, block votes were delivered by community leaders, and anyone who questioned it was smeared as a racist. The result? A council so corrupted by religious patronage that its mayor, Lutfur Rahman, was actually removed from office for electoral fraud. And yet, somehow he came back. That's what happens when people stop voting as citizens and start voting as a sect. Equal citizenship can't survive in a system like that. When people see government divided by religion, Muslim politicians for Muslim issues, Christian politicians for Christian issues, you get feudalism with modern branding. You get a nation sliced into mini states of grievance, each fighting for their own piece of the pie. And Britain, unbelievably, is importing the very sectarian politics that wrecked the Middle East. The cruel irony is that it's not Islamists who make this possible. It's Britain's own institutions. The politicians, the journalists, academics, all terrified of one word: Islamophobia. This moral cowardice is what allows ideologues to advance without resistance. They know exactly how to exploit Western guilt and its democracy. Tolerance has become submission. I say all this not as an outsider, but as someone who's lived through what happens when religion runs the state. I was born in a country that claimed to be 100% Muslim, where apostasy is punishable by death and blasphemy can end your freedom, sometimes your life. I know people who've lost their lives exactly this way. I've seen what it looks like when politics bows to faith. And if Britain doesn't wake up soon, it's heading down the same path. Not through violence, but through slow cultural capture, through silence, through the polite excuses of those too scared to offend.
In the neon haze of a broken dawn, steel towers hum, but the wild runs on. A shadow moves